Right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Paul Carroll Sport Podcast. Plenty to look back on this week's episode. I'll be looking back through the senior hurling semi-finals, Premier Intermediate hurling semi-finals as well, and of course the relegation finals that happened over the weekend. So, great weekend of sport in Tipperary. Of course, Sunday's games were very much impacted by the weather. Especially those early games, the intermediate semi-finals on Sunday were really affected by the weather. The games in Semple Stadium on Sunday as well. So we're going to run down through all these games as we always do on the podcast. We are a day late. I do apologise for that. I usually do it on a Monday evening. It's, 5 to 7 here as I'm recording this. Well, this is live if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening back on Spotify, that's the time I'm recording. I am a day late. I had a really busy weekend. I done the double header on Saturday in Semple Stadium. Then I went to that Win a House launch, the Tipperary fundraiser. I was at that in Cashel on Saturday night, and then the double header on Sunday down in Semple Stadium again. And then we had I was on the early shift inside in Tip FM on Monday morning, so that's an early rise. First bulletin at 7 o'clock in the morning, so I was fairly tired now yesterday afternoon, and I didn't even get a chance to look back on some of the games I missed until yesterday evening and today. So that's why we're recording here of a Tuesday evening. But nonetheless, we'll look back through all the games. We'll talk down through what happened and look at what's to come as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like. The comments is open there. I'll be keeping an eye on them if there's any comments coming in. And we'll get straight into it. We'll get straight into it with the seniors. So. Now we know the final two in the Senior Hurling Championship for 2024, Toomevara against Lockmore Castleiney. And we mentioned at the start of the year that Toom were a good price considering they were semi-finalists last year, and they were something like 16-1 at the start of the year. And here they are in the final. They're first since 2008, and they'll be taking on Lockmore Castleiney, which is a real novel final. And you'll find that across the three grades. If you look at the Premier Intermediate, Cashel Kincormac's against Carrick Swan. That's a great fixture, West versus South, which is good for both of those divisions in terms of next year. There'll be a West Senior Championship if Cashel win, and then the South will have two senior teams if Carrick Swan win. So that's going to be a great final, and Moneygall Ballingarry as well. We'll talk down through all those games as we go through the podcast, but we'll start with Toomevara. As I said, booked their place in a first final since 2008. Since that 2008 team was the end of like a great run for the club. I think that they win something crazy like 11 county finals in 17 years or something mad like that in that period. So here they are back after 16-year hiatus into a final, and it's because they've beaten Moycarkey Burris 219 to 20 points. And looking back on this game, I have my match notes and team sheets that I would have had on commentary with me here, so I'll be looking down at this. But it was a slow start. The games on Saturday across the county were played in far better conditions, obviously, because Sunday was just a nightmare for hurling in terms of the wind and the rain and things like that. But Saturday was ideal conditions. Semple Stadium was like a carpet. There was overcast skies, meaning no sun in anyone's eyes. It was dry and things like that. There was no major wind at all in Semple Stadium on Saturday. So the conditions for this game were perfect. And it was a slow enough start. It was 6 points apiece after 15 minutes. Toom, you kind of felt were just, we mentioned it on commentary that they're almost sleepwalking through the game. Because there was no real energy about them in those early exchanges. Tom Ryan was the man who was picking up Darren McCarthy and was doing a good job on him. And then Tom Ryan rolled his ankle and was down injured for a while, and he walked off injured, and it felt like he was going to be done for the day. And he ended up coming back on, and within about 2 minutes, Darren McCarthy had a goal, and that was the goal that really injected life into Toomevara. As I mentioned, that slow start, they probably needed something, and of course it was Darren McCarthy. He's just been on just unbelievable form this year. 352 in the championship. Like, he's 19 years old. It's hard to overstate kind of just how important he has been to Toom and how kind of special what he is doing is, because again, 19 years old, 352. I think he'd only 10 points from play in the championship leading up to the semi-final, but I think he scored 2-3 or that from play the other day. Definitely the 2 goals. And one of them was that run he made, and he was kind of on the turn and just lettered it past Reece Shelley. And then the second one was just such a tidy finish into the corner, just unreal, crept it inside the post. So that was a huge difference going in at halftime. 2-9 to 11 points was the score at that stage. And Kevin McCarthy as well, I've him mentioned down on the notes on screen if you're watching on YouTube. 5 points from play he got. So Darren McCarthy's older brother, he had a really, really fine game. But it wasn't all Toomevara. Like Mike Harkey, Kieran Cummins again. Like if I'm doing a team of the year at the end of this, he's definitely going to be in midfield. He was very good again. Owen Hayes at centre back made some massive catches and was a big part of. He caught so many puck outs. He was a big part of all the good that Mike Harkey Burris did, I thought, the other day as well. They're such a young team just looking at their players. Kyle Shelley come on at half time, scored 4 points. A lot of them were frees. Kieran Morris with 5. Max Hackett again, only a point. Probably struggled to kind of really get into the game like Mike Harkey would have wanted him to. Joe Maher with 2 points as well. He's always kind of real economical. He's getting around the place. He's getting on a lot of ball. He's working hard. David Costigan off the bench, the youngster, got a point there as well. Jack Hayes a point. Bill Flanagan a point. Like these are all very young players. And Joe, I think Mike Harkey, albeit in the loss, they will probably feel heartened by the year that they've had because they had that under 21A success a few years ago, but then they're in they weren't getting out of groups and things like that, and it wasn't translating to senior just yet. But now they'll take an awful lot from that now, getting out of the group, getting into the quarter final, having that massive win over Killadangan, and really putting it up to Toomevara in that final. As I said, finished 2-19 to 20 points. But in fairness, Mike Harkey had some big chances as well. Niall Heffernan came on, and when the ball popped off to him heading down towards the Kleinen end, it looked like it was going to be a sure goal, but it was young Jake Hackett off the bench, and he just threw himself in front of it, and Toom went down the other end and got a point. So that was only with about, within the last quarter of the game. So that was a big moment as well. And Seamus O'Farrell made a kind of a block off the line as well at one stage. So Mike Harkey weren't without their chances here, but you kind of always felt Toom were probably the better team. So yeah, like Toom go marching on. Other scores for Toom: Adam Hall, Jack Delaney, Darren Delaney, Robbie Quirk, Conor O'Farrell, they all got a point each. Mark McCarthy got 2 points as well. And in fairness to Mark McCarthy and Jack Delaney, they're putting in serious shifts for Toom. And speaking to Eamon Kelly after the Lockmore game, he kind of referred to Toom as the hardest working team in the division. And it's hard to deny that the way they're working now. Lockmore are an incredibly hard-working team as well. We'll get to that as well. So, like Toom are probably full value for the win, but again, a great year for Mike Harkey Burris, and I'm sure they'll look to push on with all those young players coming through as well, and a few more to come up from minor and things like that as well. So that's how that game went. Speaking to Ken Dunn after, he would have been on that Toomevara team in 2008 that beat Thurles Sarsfields, and he was delighted to get through. It's been a long time coming for Toom in terms of 16 years compared to that kind of golden period they would have had before that. So Toom back into a final, 2-19 to 20 points win over Mike Harkey Burris, and they will be playing Lockmore Castleiney. Lockmore 17 points, Thurles Sarsfields 2-9 was the full-time score here. And converse to the Toom Mike Harkey game, this game was played in awful conditions. And we do have a comment coming in from Kevin McKenna. He says, brilliant achievement for Eamon Kelly, managed Patrick's Well to a Limerick County final last year and now reaching Tip final with Lockmore. Yeah, Eamon Kelly has been a manager with plenty of success in his managerial career, and he's in fairness, and I'll talk about it here with Lockmore, the big kind of question kind of coming into this game was, how are Lockmore going to deal with Ronan Maher? He's been dominating every game he's playing. Every bit of good that Thurles Sarsfields have kind of tends to come from that platform he sets, and how hard Thurles are to break down. But I thought, in fairness to Eamon Kelly and his Lockmore management team, they had a plan in place, and that plan was to stick Mossy McGrath on Ronan Maher and just not leave his shoulder. It was Mossy McGrath marking Ronan Maher more than it was the other way around. And yeah, Thurles just didn't really have an answer for it. Lockmore were playing with the wind and the rain in the first half, and you kind of felt with how difficult conditions were that they're going to need to be up a bit here at half time. You could see Patrick McCormack's puck outs for Lockmore in that first half were only going to between the 265s because of how strong the wind was against him. And you kind of felt that Lockmore needed to kind of capitalise on that. And for the start, they did. They were 4 points up after 4 or 5 minutes. They were motoring really well. But then a long ball into Lee McCormack goes on a run from the 45, pops the hand pass off to Paddy Creedon, and he buries it. And 2 minutes later, a ball into Paddy Creedon, kind of flicked onto him by Lee McCormack on the 21, back to goal, turns his man, and he's just impossible to stop when he gets motoring like that, Paddy Creedon. And he put it past the goalkeeper. So those were massive moments because you felt, that could come back to bite Lockmore in the second half, conceding those goals. They kind of lost a bit of momentum. They did go in up by a point at half time, 11 points to 2-4, but you were kind of feeling as the players were running down the tunnel that could be a bit of trouble for Lockmore. You kind of always have in the back of your head that, Lockmore never bet that they're going to put it up to Thurles, but you kind of had that feeling that Thurles are going to get motoring here now with the elements in their back. But Lockmore it was some heart and determination and hooks and blocks and getting bodies in around the tackle and things like that. But the main man for Lockmore was John McGrath. 12 points he got. He did miss a few frees and things like that, difficult frees, but in terms of just winning the ball, winning frees, his hold-up play, how clever he is, it was just an unbelievable performance. 12 points, as I said, out of Lockmore's 15. The other scores, Kieran Connolly got a point. Kieran Connolly got probably the biggest hit of the championship so far. Caught a ball kind of off balance on the turn in front of the tunnel in Semple Stadium, and who's the last person probably in the county you want coming at you full pelt like that? It's probably Ronan Maher. And it was Ronan Maher who just leathered into him. And I remember at the time, and speaking to people after, it was kind of like, geez, should that have been a card? Could that have been a red card? But looking back on it, I watched it back on Clubber, and I don't know, it seemed shoulder to shoulder now. He was running like a train. So, it's hard to see it exactly, but it was play on at the time. And Kieran Connolly, in fairness to him, bounced up off the ground, and there wasn't too much complaining from him. But Kieran Connolly got 2 points, Ed Connolly got a point, and Massey McGrath, in fairness, doing that role on Ronan Maher, he got himself a point as well. And Kieran McGrath came off the bench to get a point. Kieran McCormack, Rucker as they call him in Lockmore, like he usually in the last couple of games has been coming off the bench. He started on Sunday and didn't really get into the game. He seems to be maybe he's just more of an impact off the bench. Now conditions again, like he was getting himself in around hooks and blocks and things like that, but getting on the ball, it just wasn't that kind of day, was it? Like, it was pure battling for possession. And I kind of had a sneaky suspicion that on Sunday, that because of the conditions and because of the way Thurles play, that it would affect their play more than it would affect Lockmore's play. And kind of what I mean by that is, against Nina, Thurles hit 51 shots or something like that. They love shooting from distance. They've really good ball strikers. But on Sunday, you couldn't shoot from distance with how wet it was and the wind as well. And it made kind of ball striking very difficult. So I had that kind of suspicion that would be an issue. And it was for Thurles. You didn't see that 50 shots or whatever. They just scored 2-9, and the second half alone was 6 points to 5 in favour of Lockmore, and that was Lockmore playing against the elements. So that kind of tells its own story. But Thurles could never really get it going up front. Like Paddy Creedon, I'd say he kind of frustrates Thurles people, I'd imagine, because he's so much talent, so much ability. Like those 2 goals he got, you're kind of thinking, if you just keep hitting this lad in ball, you're not going to be able to stop him. But he didn't really get on much ball after those 2 goals. And Liam McCormack, similarly, such a live wire, so quick. But they just couldn't really get the right sort of ball into him. And they did ring the changes. They brought on Pa Burke. They brought on Shawnee Butler. Massey McCormack actually came on. I thought he was kind of out with an injury, but he came on. David Corbett as well. Kieran Costello. So they did ring the changes. They tried to get something going, but it just didn't happen. And Connor Stakelum there worked incredibly hard throughout the game, but they just couldn't make an impact on the scoreboard, really. Thurles. Dara Stakelum got 2 points as well, but I think they probably would have liked a bit more from him on the day, and he's still a very young player. James Armstrong got a point, a really good point in the start of the second half. Now, he did probably give away a few silly frees. I remember there was one time, was it Brian McGrath made a run up the field and kind of beating a load of players, but he was off balance. He was kind of going nowhere. And just as I think he got a hand pass away or whatever, James Armstrong just came into him, and it was a silly free to give away. And another one then, John McGrath had no hurley, and he was running out towards the sideline to try and keep the ball in play, and he just wrapped his 2 feet around the ball on the sideline, maybe 30 yards out from the end line, and James Armstrong just ran into the back of him. And I'd say Paddy Maher was probably pulling his hair out on the sideline, because Lockmore were playing against the elements, so they were going to be trying to slow the game down the whole time in that second half, and things like that kind of played into their hands. But what I have written down there is Paddy McCormack, unreal save late on, and I think, was it Liam McGrath or one of the, maybe Paul McCahey, I think, running through on goal. It was a 2-on-1 situation. He had the yellow helmet on anyway, and he popped the hand pass over to Kieran McGrath, who had come on, and he kind of back to goal, spinning on the turn from inside the 14, went high, and Patrick McCormack, just an unbelievable save. It's a shame that it didn't affect the outcome of the game. It was really late on, but it did keep Thurles in the game for another puck out, because if that had gone into the back of the net, there was 5 points in it in injury time, it wouldn't have it would have been game over. But he saved it. It went out for a 65, and I'm trying to think, did Lockmore miss that 65? I think they might have, and the puck out went down, and Lockmore won the ball eventually, and that was it. But what a save from Patrick McCormack that was. As I was mentioning, he's 2003, he made his debut with Sarsfields. That's 21 years ago. And according to Keane Tracy, anyway, who does be on with us in Tip FM there from the Sarsfields club, he reckons that Patrick McCormack hasn't missed a championship match in those 21 years. Like, that's an incredible record. And I think if Thurles had won, Patrick McCormack was going to be playing in his 15th county senior final, including replays, which is just that's, I'd imagine that could be a record in the county. I don't know, maybe back to the 60s. I think Sarsfields were dominant back around that time as well. Maybe some of those players. But it's probably worth looking into, because he's played in 14 county senior hurling finals in Tipperary, which is just insane. But it was a brilliant save by him, but it wasn't to be. And yeah, that's the end of the road for this Thurles team this year. Disappointment for them, beating finalists last year in a replay, and they go out at the semi-final stage to Lockmore Castellini. I think for Thurles, there's probably a little bit of a transition coming in the next couple of years. Not a big one, not a kind of write them off for 4 or 5 years. No, not like that. It's kind of like they have unbelievable young lads coming, and you see Darlas Og, and they won the minor A final against Holy Cross in what looked like a classic on Saturday. The likes of your Ewan Murrays, Killian Minogues, these fellas are young, but in the next couple of years they'll surely be marquee players for Thurles, and the likes of the two Stakelums there, Connor and Dara, will be more experienced. James Armstrong there as well. So there'll be no fear of Thurles Sarsfields, that's for sure. So they're always going to be thereabouts, but they have a few real nice players to come in the next couple of years, which is maybe a worry for the rest of the senior hurling teams. But for this year, it's Lockmore who go marching on, and it sets up what's going to be a really interesting final. In my head, this is a very close to 50-50 final. I see this as being kind of a... Now look, Lockmore will have plenty more experience than the Toomey Vara players. Most of those Toom players would have never played in the county senior final before. Actually, all of them. I think maybe, if I look at the team sheets there, I was looking back on the 2008 final programme, and there's a Conor O'Mara or Conor O'Farrell. It's one of the Conors. I think Conor O'Mara might have been on that panel in 2008. Like Andrew Ryan Locke, I think, was too young. I think there was one more there as well. Davy Nolan, I think it was. David Nolan, yeah, I think it was he was on that panel as well. So they barred those players. None of these Toom lads would have played in a county final before, whereas everyone in this Lockmore team more than likely would have been involved in 2021 at least, if not 9/10 of the team would have been on that. So Lockmore are going to have the more experience, but I see this as being kind of like a tight game, kind of free for free between John McGrath and Darren McCarthy. They're kind of two slower paced teams. I don't know if that makes sense. Like John McGrath will take his time over frees, Darren McCarthy will. But I see it as being, I'm really looking forward to this final, and I'm really looking forward to finals day, because you've that game on, and then before that you have Carrick Swan against Cashel, which will just be so much supporters there, and it'll be a brilliant atmosphere at that one, I'm sure. So it'll be a really good county final day in 2 weeks' time. I'd imagine there'll be a good crowd as well. With all three divisions being represented, north, mid, south, and west. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that county final day. And for Toomey Vara, the last time they were in the county final in 2008, as we said, Carrick Swan actually won the Seamus O'Reen final that day in Semple Stadium. That was against Killerone McDonough's. That was the first ever Seamus O'Reen final. So could be a good omen there for Toomey Vara come 2 weeks' time, October 13th. And we have the fixtures confirmed now. So it's 1:30 on the Sunday. We'll have the Premier Intermediate final. And then at, what time is it? 3:45, we have Toom against Lockmore. So that's how the semi-finals went. As I said, the weather really affected that game on Sunday, and the weather really affected the senior relegation final on Sunday as well. This was Lura against Templederry. Lura are the team that do stay up. Templederry dropped down to Premier Intermediate. 118 for Lura, 115 for Templederry. Watched most of this game back last night, and the first thing to note is conditions were absolutely brutal inside Nina. So difficult for the players. But the top kind of note I have written down there is Templederry. Every Templederry game we've mentioned this year, I think we've mentioned that they've been hit by the injury bug, and they just can't get their best 15 on the field. But in all of those games, they had Sean Ryan, who was kind of the difference maker. The hope that they had to go out and win games was having him up front, but they didn't have him the other day. He was out injured against Lura. So was Brian Stapleton. So was Adrian Ryan. And that was going to make things really, really difficult for Templederry. But in fairness to them, Lura played with the wind in Nina in the first half. The wind was blown down towards the scoreboard end in Nina. And Lura it was kind of a slowish start. They were 4 points up after 15 minutes, 8 points to 4. But they kind of pushed on with some late points before half time. Lura were up 14 points to 6. But then the second half started, and it was all Templederry. There was a period there, I think, between the 33rd and the 43rd minute, where Templederry scored 7 points in a row and got it back to 3. And then on the 47th minute, Sean Collins got a goal. It was kind of a Grode Ryan miss hit that went into the full forward line. One of the Templederry players got a touch on it, and it fell towards Sean Collins, and he kind of touched it and let it bounce and just let fly into the back of the net. So that was level on the 47th minute, and all the momentum was at Templederry at that stage. Lura were kind of gone out of it for a good part of the start of that second half, or the third quarter of the game. It was it would have been 114 to 17, I think, at that stage. And you're thinking, this is real shaky stuff now for Lura. They're playing against the wind. There's 10 minutes to go. Templederry tails are up, but it took a big moment from Colm Fogarty. Got a ball on the run on the 45. Took on a couple of players, created kind of a bit of an overlap, and popped a hand pass forward to young Conor Kendi, and he buried it into the back of the net, and that was the difference, really. That was the goal that Lura needed. That was on the 52nd minute, and that made it 117 to 114. Colm Fogarty 10 points, 4 from play, and there was it was 2 points, 3 points for the last kind of measure. That was 114. So Templederry did get another point. And Templederry did have 2 big chances late on while they were 2 points down. There was a goal chance for Oren Murphy down at the scoreboard end on the right-hand side, on the end line, went for goal, ended up missing the target completely at the near post. And that was kind of a goal chance, and they didn't even get a point out of it. And then Grode Ryan hit a ball wide from kind of central position outside the edge of the D. He was kind of off balance, but that going wide was just a big miss for Templederry to try and get it down to 1 point in injury time. But then Donncha O'Mara, the sub for Lura, come on, and he got the big score to put 3 points between them. So that was it for Lura, 118 to 115. They stay up. Their first year at senior, they had that big defeat to Nina, but apart from that, competitive in all the games. And I suppose that first year up is kind of all about survival, and they've done that. And Temple-Derry will drop down to Premier Intermediate next year, and if they can get their best team on the field, they're going to be matched for anyone in that division. They won it not too long ago against Kilnall in the final. So, but yeah, just a disappointing year for Temple-Derry, where they'll feel like they probably never got a good crack at it with their full team. So, yeah, that's how the senior championship has kind of set up. It's mad to think we've only one game left in the senior championship, and that is the final. Well, unless we go to a replay for what would be 2020 went to extra time. So if you kind of count that, 2021 was a replay, 22 was a replay, 23 was a replay. So we could be going for the 5th year in a row where the county final hasn't been sorted in regulation. So something to keep an eye on there. And then if we go down to the Premier Intermediate now, what a game this was. Cashel Kincormac 6-21, Upperchurch Drumban 2-28. Unbelievable entertainment. It was, I think, 2:20 apiece on full time. I have it written here, yeah, full time it was 2:20 apiece. David McGrath got a goal early on for Cashel. It was a good run by Devin Ryan, popped the hand pass and low pass the goalkeeper. It was a slow start for Upperchurch. They were down 1-8 to 6 points after 18 minutes. And then they hit a long free in towards the edge of the square, and Paddy Green one-handed touchdown into his chest and buried it from close range, just kind of on the edge of the square. And yeah, that kind of got Upperchurch back into it. And they were 5 points down. I think they scored like 1-3 without reply, and they came right back into it then and went into the lead. But Devin Ryan I have it written down here, Devin Ryan with some scandalous points in the first half. They were both over the shoulder, running out towards the Ove stand side, hitting down towards the town end, out in the sideline, over his shoulder. Just class scores from him. 1-13 each at half time, so that will tell you kind of just how even both teams were throughout. And it was even for all of the second half. Ger Brown didn't start the game for Cashel, but he did come on in the second half, and he scored a goal off the bench. It was a nice run for Mushin O'Donoghue, and he played a real perfect hand pass, because there was a couple of bodies around. It was on the run. If it was a little bit off, the goal chance was gone, but he passed it to Ger Brown, who was then in one-on-one with the goalie, and he put it low past. A minute later then, Upperchurch were on the run down the far end of the field. Can't remember which player was through, but Owen Connolly just comes out of nowhere, just sprints back the field and gets a perfectly timed flick away from the Upperchurch players' hurley as they were like crossing the 14, coming in for a goal. Unbelievable stuff from Owen Connolly. I've mentioned it all year how much of a leader he's been. He scored 1-6 on the day, so he was really impressive. Cathal Quinn had a really good game. He kind of had to marshal Pat Ryan. Pat Ryan was looking dangerous early on. Cathal Quinn was kind of pushed out the field, and he went back to that full back position, and yeah, just was unbelievable back there. Real strong, physical, socks pulled up, ready to work kind of player. And he got, what have I written down for? He's got 2 points in the game as well. So, he's effective wherever you kind of need him. And we saw him feature with Tip early on in the league, and he didn't look out of place at all. So, interesting to see how he kind of continues to develop. But elsewhere, I suppose how the game finished off was Upperchurch were up by a point in injury time, and Paddy Fahy, like he's down for a point, but he was so effective throughout the game. I've always kind of mentioned, when I've mentioned his name before, about his willingness to run with the ball and his ability to run with the ball. And I don't know how he did it at this stage of the game. He would have had a good hour's hurling done, where he was asked to do a lot of running, a lot of chasing. He was often kind of in full forward, running out to the wings to try and get a ball or get onto a loose get onto what looked to be like a dead end kind of, or what am I trying to say? Not a dead end, lost cause. Trying to get onto a lost cause, and he done so much running, but he got on the ball in the middle of the field, and down a point in injury time, just took off running, and he ended up running straight into an Upperchurch fella, and he had a delayed reaction. He kind of bounced off him, and then he went down, probably looking for a free. He was probably absolutely, just exhausted after that run. But I think if Upperchurch people were to be given out about that free being given, I actually thought he was chopped earlier on his run, so that's just the way it goes. And Devin Ryan put the free over on the 21, and it went to extra time. So I think it was 2:20 apiece on full time. I'm trying to think who got the goal. Paddy Phelan, yeah, I have to mention that Paddy Phelan goal. The ball was played into him on the run, kind of up to the 14, and he just couldn't get it into his possession. It looked like the chance had gone, and the defenders got back behind him, and he was on his knees inside the 14. He just threw it up and let fly off his knees, and it went into the bottom corner. So he scored 1-3, and for some reason he was taken off just on full time for Colm Ryan, and we were kind of thinking, why has he been taken off? Was he could be injured now? I don't know, because he came back out in his gear like from after full time for extra time, and he was sitting in the, not in the dugout but in the stand with the subs, and you're thinking, God, they're surely going to bring him back on because he was doing so well and he looked so dangerous. But for whatever reason, they didn't bring him back on, and again, if he was injured, fair enough, but he was playing so well, he didn't look injured coming off. But the start of extra time then is when Oisin O'Donoghue really came into it. I kind of mentioned on commentary he's probably having a little bit of a quieter game, but sometimes he drops back the field. He did get himself a good point to start the second half, and he's another fella that can kind of, like Cathal Quinn, can just play wherever needed, but he just erupted into the game. Now, he did set up the goal for Ger Brown, as we mentioned as well, but he erupted into the game in the first half of extra time. He scored 2 goals. One of them was a pass played off to him. He kind of had his back to goals and he just turned and roofed it into the top of the net from close range. The second one then was a shot from, maybe was it Devin Ryan? Goalkeeper saves it. Oisin O'Donoghue is there, fires it into the top of the net again. This was in the first 5 minutes of extra time. And then a ball from a sideline, I think, played into him, and he got it on the run, looking for the hat-trick in about 3 minutes, and he's kind of pulled back, both arms being pulled back. He tried to kick it in, penalty given, and Ronan Connolly buries it. So that was, I think 3-1 that Cashel scored in the first half of extra time. So that put them, do I even have the half-time extra time score written down in front of me? I don't think I do, but that put them up, I think, 6 or 7 at half-time. And then the second half of extra time, Upper Church, in fairness to them, kept plugging away. They did get a good few scores. If we look at Upper Church's scores here, Paulie Green got 1-5, Paddy Phelan 1-3, Paul Ryan, the free taker, got 6, Pat Ryan with 3 points, Conor Fahey and Ailby O'Donoghue both got a point, Niall and Diarmuid Grant got 2 points each, but they did kind of get it back to 2-3 points, and there was only 2 points in it as kind of the clock ticked towards additional time of the second half of extra time. But then it was Adrian Cummins, a substitution, who came on, and ball broke through for him, and he was in one-on-one, and he buried it past the goalkeeper. It was a real kind of, okay, now we've won it kind of celebration from the Cashel crowd. And I did see him run after the ball in the net and give it to the umpire, so I don't know, did he want to keep that ball after the match? But I did see him give the ball to the umpire, so that's an interesting one. But that was a great kind of moment, I suppose, for the Cashel supporters. Ross Bonner with 2 points, David McGrath, he got the early goal, then he went off for Ger Brown, but then he actually came back on for him. He scored 1-1. Other scores then we mentioned, like Owen Connolly has just been hurling unbelievable all year. 1-6 he got. But the Cashel full back line were looking a little bit under pressure at times, and that's when Cathal Quinn went back there. Nathan Ryan had been yellow carded and had fouled I think Pat Ryan a couple of times, and was just struggling with the space that was there. But in fairness to the Cashel management team, they kind of sorted out that situation. They had Cathal Quinn there, Conor Dwyer was sweeping around, and it was good in-game management, I suppose, to kind of get through that kind of tricky spell that they did have in that full back line. But no, really good win for Cashel, and it kind of sets up a really exciting final with Carrick Swan. This Carrick Swan team beat Girton Glengoule in their semi-final 18 points to 14, and this was one of those Sunday games where the weather was shocking. If we look at it here, it was Girton who played with the wind in the first half and the conditions, but they only went in 2 points up at half time. And similarly to the Lockmore game, you kind of felt that wasn't going to be enough, and for Girton it wasn't enough. It was 9 points to 7 at half time, and 18 points to 14 on full time. So Girton scored 5 points in the second half compared to Carrick Swan's 11. I think Carrick Swan deserved the win, definitely. They're the better team throughout. Girton probably just struggled to get their forwards firing. Only 2 of their starting 6 forwards scored. Keane Hayes scored 11 of their 14 points. Darren Maher did get a point, and the other 2 points came from the wing back Conor Gleeson. And Carrick-Swan just had a way wider spread of scores. You're looking at Callum Lanigan scored 9. Danny O'Hanlon came on to kind of raise the roof to get a score to put them 3 points clear. Callum Walsh with 2 points. Aaron Dunn was really effective there in full forward. He scored 3 points. The trio O'Hallorans, Gavin and his brother Aaron and their cousin Eric, they all had really good games. Aaron O'Halloran got a point and Eric O'Halloran got a point as well. But Gavin is just kind of running the show back there as well. Ben Mulcair with a point as well. But this is a really good Carrick-Swan team to watch. As I interviewed Gavin O'Halloran after, and I mentioned about their supporters. Like, I can't wait for county final day with Carrick-Swan there. They've such vocal supporters. They're shouting their team on for everything. They're cheering everything on. They're kind of jeering the other team if they hit a wide, or they're it's like a theatre crowd. Like, they're reacting to everything. And they've brought the flags up to Semple Stadium. I'm sure they'll do it all times 3 or 4 in 2 weeks' time. So really looking forward to that. But in terms of how the game played out, it was pretty much as I said, they couldn't really get much going, Garton Who. It was kind of tit for tat stuff in the second half. There were still only 2 points in it, heading down the last 10 minutes. Then Danny O'Hanlon came on and he made a score look so simple out near the sideline, about 40 yards out, threw it over the bar, and that just ignited the Carrick-Swan supporters and the players. They won the next kind of couple of breaking balls. But he's such a kind of well-liked person in Carrick-Swan club, clearly, and just a big character for them. So when he came on and did that, it was similar against my own club, Burgess. When he came on, he did this class flick that opened the play up, and yeah, he's just real good player to watch. And he was warming up for a good bit. I was kind of waiting for him to come on because they had the wind, and it was kind of like the perfect out ball if they needed it to lump it down on top of him. And with Kieran Lonergan in goals for Carrick-Swan, he's just a monstrous puck out. So really looking forward to that final between Carrick-Swan and Cashel. If we look at, I have a tab opened here, the Tipperary. This is how the bookmakers see the finals going. So I was really surprised with these odds. I only had a look at them there before I started recording. But if you look at the Lockmore Toom game, they have Lockmore 3-10 favourites, Toom 9-4. Like, I see that being a closer game than that. Like, 9-4 is crazy in my view. Like, Lockmore I would have as favourites, but not 3-10 favourites, I don't think. Similarly, Cashel 2-5, Carrick-Swan 7-4. Like, I would have Cashel favourites for that game, but these Seamus O'Reen finals, we've seen them the last couple of years. Thurles wouldn't have been expected to beat Lura, I don't think, and they drew with them and nearly bet them in the replay. The year before that, Roscrea and Garton Who were right there with them as well. So these finals kind of take on their life of their own, but I think Cashel do look different this year. The game against Boherlahan seems to have brought on Cashel in a big way, confidence-wise and things like that. So, Cashel probably will be the favourites, the 2-5 favourites going in there now. But I have a feeling Toomevara won't be 9-4 by the time the ball is thrown in at 3:45 on October 13th. I think people will be having a cut at that price, I would say. But we'll move on to the Newport Sean Tracy's game. And I forgot to open up my predictions, actually. Where we go here? So these are the predictions I did have. So right, we predicted a Cashel Kincormac's win. Now they did win, but it was after extra time. But look, we'll still put it down. I went with Toomevara to win. So Saturday we done well, and then Sunday we went with a draw between Garton Who and Carrick-Swan. It was Carrick-Swan who won that game, so we missed out on that. And we did go with Thurles to beat Lockmore, but Lockmore there. So it's a win for all the twos there so far. We'll head to the relegation. I did go with Lura there as well. So if we look at the Newport Sean Tracy's game, if you did watch the podcast last week looking ahead to these games, I think I did have draw down originally, and then I went, Sean Tracy's will just shade it. But it was a draw. It was again a game in Nina on Sunday with awful conditions. Newport 118, Sean Tracy's 215. Interestingly enough, Sean O'Brien came back for Newport, former Tip player. I think he's living in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, somewhere like that, I think, or he's living abroad anyway. Hatton hurled for Newport this year, came back for the relegation final. Similarly for Sean Tracy's, Brian Carey has been away. He came back for the final. So it's really kind of all on the line stuff. Classic relegation final, and it was a proper relegation final in terms of just battling for every ball. Um, you know, awful conditions, everything you kind of don't want in a game, but everything you kind of want in a relegation final from just watching on. Such a tense game. Newport's first score was a Keane Flanagan sideline, a brilliant score at that. Sean Tracy's were in the lead against the breeze after 25 minutes, so it was a poor start to the game for Newport, but a Sean Tracy's puck out against the wind went straight into a Newport man's hand. He took it forward, hand passed it on to Oren Connors, and he's took it in and buried it low past the goalkeeper. So Newport did go in up at half time, but only by 2 points, and that was playing with a monstrous breeze. So I'd imagine they were worried. Jody Ryan, interestingly enough, was playing for Sean Tracy, so they obviously appealed that red card that we were talking about there 2 podcasts ago, that he got against Silvermines in the relegation semi-finals. So, I did think at the time that was an incredibly harsh red card, so it was obviously overturned. So he was playing, and interestingly enough, I think was it, 10 seconds into the second half, he got the goal straight from the throw-in basically. Ball kind of found its way into him. He was back to goals up at the scoreboard end of Nina and just rifled it high past the goalkeeper. So straight away, Sean Tracy's had taken the lead 1-9 to 1-8, and then they got the next 2 points. So it was 1-11 to 1-8 after 33 minutes, and it was looking bad for Newport, and they looked for experience again. Conor O'Mahony was introduced off the bench at that stage, and then Sean Tracy's kind of stead plugging away, got the next couple of points. Newport started to get a couple of points. Colin Floyd was just brilliant for Newport throughout this game. Really, really unreal performance from him, catching ball, winning frees, and everything like that. So we'll touch on that in a second. But Michael Feehan, the big number 11 for Sean Tracy's, he got a goal on the 42nd minute, and that made it 2-13 to 1-11. He ran through the middle. I think was a Keane Flanagan kind of hanging off the back from me, just kind of got him off his back and just let fly, kind of mid-height, not exactly in the corner, but he just it's a difficult day to stop any sort of a shot in those conditions, and it was a brilliant goal from Michael Feehan. But as I was saying, that made it 2-13 to 1-11 to Tracy's after 42 minutes, and they're 5 points up, playing with the breeze, but they've had a tendency in the second half of games all through the year to just fade away a little bit, and that's probably kind of what happened. Newport, in fairness to him, just started just clawing it back, and it was level on 54 minutes, 2-13 to 1-16. Colin Floyd was doing it all for Newport, winning frees, scoring frees. He scored a 65. I'm not sure have I written down at what point of the game it was, but into the gale. It looked like you really had to put everything in behind it and put it over the bar, playing in towards the kind of clubhouse end in Nina. And looking at we've another comment there. I will check in on it in just a second. But yeah, Newport, what are we, level 2-13 to 1-16 on the 54th minute. Colin Floyd with some big scores. Newport went up by a point then, and that was on the 58th minute. So they clawed it back from being 5 points down against the wind to going a point up. And then things were level on the 59th minute. Paddy Deegan's 4th point of the day. That fired Tracy's back into the lead in additional time. But then Colin Floyd again wins a free, and puts it over the bar from kind of close range central position. So that levelled it up. But Tracy's were playing with the breeze. Is it Shane Stapleton? I think their goalkeeper, he lumped a puck out down the field, like down to the far 14. It broke off to Sean Tracy's number 12, Killian Kendi. So many bodies around him. He's kind of on the turn from outside the edge of the D, and it just went across the face of the goals and wide. And that was the last puck of the game. Ref blew it up after that. So if that went over the bar, Tracy's would have been safe. But they have to do it all over again. And I hope for the sake of the 2 sets of players that it's a nicer day, because that was an absolute battle. But fair play to both teams. A huge kind of fight and will kind of shown by both sets of players. And in difficult conditions, it was an entertaining game to look back on. So they'll have to do it again. That's on Saturday, October the 12th. It's at, I want to say, 4 o'clock in the Rag, which is a really strange, maybe 2 or 4. It's on the Saturday the 12th anyway of October in the Rag, which is strange enough for Newport and Sean Tracy's. I thought maybe Nina again, or Dalla or Temple Derry or somewhere like that, but Yeah, the rag is where it's on. I'm sure there is some reason for it, but that's where it's on. I'll have a look back on these comments. River Power. I thought some of the commentary and opinions from some about options Cahill would have as being weak, as the standard of the semis were out of pocket and way off. Very poor support of players. There's loads of talent there. So yeah, that's probably something I was going to bring up. Yeah, there's an awful lot of that. Like I've heard that a lot this year from going to matches and that people would say, oh, Cahill has so much to look at, has he? Like, you know, kind of saying that, oh, the standard is poor, that players in Tip are poor. But I don't know. You know, I don't watch much other club games really, so like in terms of other counties. So, you know, I don't know what else is out there. There's not an awful lot of players kind of sticking their hand up and saying, you know, I have to be a part of the Tip panel. There definitely is a few, and we'll get to one of them in just a second. That being Dylan Walsh of Ballingarry. There's a few, and I don't know. People are pessimistic in general about Tip at the minute. You know, it's been a difficult couple of years, but I was actually had the chance to interview Liam Cahill on Saturday. I was emceeing that launch of the Win a House Tipperary fundraiser, so got to have a really good chat with Liam Cahill, and just from talking to him, the vibe you kind of get is that, you know, there's going to be a lot of changes for Tip next year, and he's a very determined person, and you know, just from talking to him, I'd very much be backing him next year, like, you know, as you would anyway, because you want to see Tip do well. But I can kind of tell that it really matters to Liam Cahill how Tipperary are playing, and I think he probably would have been really hurt this year with how the team played and how the results went. So, you know, because I think he cares so much about it, just judging by talking to him, and you know, he's of course a great servant to Tip GA, from being a player to being minor and under-20 manager and now the senior manager in a difficult time for Tipperary. You know, as I was saying to him on stage, that it's probably a period in Tipperary hurling where you'll look back in a few years and say that was that period where Tip had a load of some of their best ever players on the way out. You know, the likes of your Brendan Maher, Shamie Callanan, Paddy Maher, and a couple of more of that kind of golden generation that are just kind of filtering out of the team. And then we have what seems to be a really good crop of underage players that are, you know, still only coming through minor and under 20 at the minute. So we're in that kind of middle period where we do still have really good players, but it's just that kind of difficult period where it's hard to fill the boots of some of the players that are leaving. But you know, I'm really interested to see how Tip get on next year. I'm looking forward to that already. Just from talking to Liam Cahill there the other day. So, but yeah, look, there's always pessimism out there when it comes to Tipperary hurling, considering how we've gone in the last few minutes. So that's where that comment is coming in there. But we'll move on now to the Intermediate Championship. Although let's put in our results there from that prediction. So I forgot that looks really small on your screen. Let me do that. That's too big. There, that's perfect. Right, so we had Sean Tracy's and Newport. We said Sean Tracy's. We did have a draw put down originally, but we did change it, so we're going to have to go with that. So the Intermediate Championship then. So what are we? We are 56 minutes into it. I've done a lot of talking about not a lot of games, so let's get going. Intermediate Championship. Both these games, semi-finals on at 12 o'clock on Sunday. So that was when the weather was awful. Like, looking back on the conditions, both Ballingarry and Golden was in Cashel, and Moneygall and Kappa White was in the Rag. We'll start with Moneygall, 117 to Kappa White's 115. So Moneygall are back into the Seamus Areen final. Closer game than I expected. I think Moneygall were 1-6 or something going into this game, so they would have been big favourites. But the conditions are just the big equaliser, I suppose. Kappa White played with the wind in the first half, and they got a scrappy goal early on. 3 minutes gone. It was a short puck out to the fullback from Moneygall, and Moneygall were down at the down at the scoreboard end, down at the scoreboard end in the Rag. Short puck out to the fullback. He plays it out to the cornerback over near the scoreboard, and it was a poor pass, so he had to kind of run back to the sideline, back to his own goals, get it into his possession, try to play it back to the goalkeeper, and was cut out by Darren McCarthy, and the goalkeeper was off his line at that stage, so he's able to round the goalie, take a touch, and buried it into the back of net. So Kappa White were up 1-3 to a point after 6 minutes, And then I have written down Shawnee Kennelly crazy goal on 13 minutes. It was a crazy goal. Kappa White had a throw-in, not a throw-in, had a... I was at a soccer match in Old Trafford last week, so throw-in maybe is on my mind. Had a line ball, and they went to play it to the corner back, and the goalkeeper for Kappa White, Jerry O'Neill, I think is his name, he had run to the far corner of the field, far corner flag position nearly, kind of expecting the ball to go short, and then he was ready for the out ball. But the problem was the fella hitting the sideline completely topped it straight into Shawnee Kennelly's hands, and Kennelly turned, looked at the goals, realised there was no goalie there, and hit it into the back of the net. And that was on 13 minutes, and I think that was what 1-4 to 1-3 or something at the time. After 17 minutes, it was 1-5 to 1-3 to Kappa White. Shawnee Kennelly was shown really well. He'd won a few frees after that as well, and was just anytime he gets on the possession, something good was happening. But at half time, Kappa White were up by a point, 1-9 to 1-8. And again, you're probably thinking, with the conditions, Moneygall have to come, that mightn't be enough. But it was a really, really close game throughout the second half. Conor Martin had a massive goal chance in the 41st minute. The Moneygall goalkeeper, Kieran Quinlan, coming out with the ball, had done really well to get it into possession, but then he lost it, and it fell to Conor Martin on the 21. And the goalie was off his line. Now, there was a few bodies around Conor Martin, so I don't know what his view was at the time, but he did try to lob it in, and it just went over the crossbar. It could have been a goal for Kappa White. That would have been a big moment. But that made it 1-11 apiece. Kappa White were actually in the lead on the 45th minute, 1-12 to 1-11. And I have written down here, Darren McCarthy, Conor Martin, Rian Doody, all had good games for Kappa White. Conor Martin, I think, got 4 or 5 points from play. He was very good. Darren McCarthy got that goal as well, and a good few points as well. Kappa White did hit a few wides, missed chances in the last few minutes when they were down by one. A few kind of ones where even the commentators were nearly getting up ready that this is the leveler, and it would kind of go wide and the kind of mood would drop. And then Joe Fogarty had a massive score. Caught a ball out near the dugouts in the rag down at the scoreboard end, took on his man and fired it over from the sideline. And then that was to put him up by 2. David Buckley got a score then, and then a big Joe Fogarty free to go up 2 minutes. Yes, that was the throw-in. There was a throw-in on kind of like the 65-yard line, kind of just in front of the stand down in the rag, on the scoreboard side of the field, let's say at that end. And it was a throw-in, and the Kappa White player pulled on the ball, but the Moneygall player put his foot in, and your man ended up pulling across your man's foot. So it was a free into Moneygall, and the Kappa White lad got a yellow card, but you could see him gesturing to the ref that your man put his foot out, like I'm pulling on the ball, and he put his foot there. And I thought it was harsh, but there was such a big slap off the pull. It's hard to know what to do from a referee's point of view, but that was Joe Fogarty then, and he put it over the bar. It was a really good score, really important free, and they ended up winning the game then by 2 points. So that's how that game played out. Moneygall go into the final. They were finalists 2 years ago when beaten by Lurra. When beaten by... they're intermediate finalists. 2 years ago, beaten by Lurra. And I'd say, I mentioned this on Tip FM the other day as well, that I'd say that the Moneygall supporters, public, the Moneygall players even, would have been fearing when they rolled out of bed on Sunday morning and opened up the blinds, because they lost the semi-final to Boherlahan last year, and that was in torrential rain, awful conditions. That game was played in Templetooey, and I'd say they're thinking, no, not again. We're going to be ruined by like an awful day where it becomes much more of a, not a lottery, but much more of a difficult day to kind of play your own game, so to speak. So fair play to Moneygall. They got out of it there with the win, and they'll go into the final to play Ballingarry. Ballingarry had a 1 point win over Golden Kilfeacle, 113 to Golden's 219. And this is about as good as an individual performance I've seen all year. Dylan Walsh, they had 110 at half time, Ballingarry to Golden's 1-1. So there was a big breeze in Cashel, and Ballingarry were playing with it. But Dylan Walsh set up the goal and scored all 10 points. It was unbelievable, his combination play. He was playing 1-2s with players. He was winning all his battles. It was just a sensational performance from Dylan Walsh. So we'll run down through the game. Paddy Burns got the goal after 3 minutes. A good run from Dylan Walsh, pop pass. the shot was saved by the goalkeeper, and it was rebounded in by Burns. Ivers had a flick then, I think it was a Ben Ivers, had a flick around the goal mouth that just rolled wide like a minute later for Ballingarry. But it was Jack Leamy then who got the goal. He got the 1-1 for Golden in the first half, playing against an awful wind. Brilliant run from Ben Curvin, and he popped the pass into Jack Leamy, and he buried it low past the goalkeeper. Nothing the goalie could do there, but that was a brilliant goal from Jack Leamy. He got a free then the first half. But I have Dylan Walsh and Keane Ryan at it. They were always at each other off the ball and things like that throughout the game. And there was a time when I think that Dylan Walsh hit a wide, and Keane Ryan kind of said something to him as he's walking past, or probably just kind of whatever. And Dylan Walsh did kind of, I'd say, flick the hurley out. Now whether he got him in the privates or not, or in the stomach, Keane Ryan did go down, and there was a reaction from the crowd, and I'd say Dylan Walsh was kind of worried for half a second as to what was going to happen. He ended up getting a yellow card, and then he got a couple of points after that as well. Golden did give away a few needless frees, a few high tackles, a few loose arms left in tackles, and Dylan Walsh punished him for the most part. So it was 1-10 to 1-1 at half time. Ben Curvin then actually went off injured for Golden 2 minutes into the second half, and it seemed to be a shoulder, and you're kind of thinking, oh, that's going to be a massive loss. The Tip under 20 captain from this year, but he came back on, and he ended up scoring a goal on the 45th minute. It was probably a shot the goalkeeper will think he should have saved. It was probably a bit of a distance at an angle. It did kind of bounce in front of him, but he kind of just missed it. He had a good chance to save it, and he just missed it. And that made it 2-4 to 1-11. So, that was back to a 4-point game after it being 9 points at half time. The first point that wasn't Dylan Walsh's from Ballingarry was on the 50th minute, and I probably should have written down who that was, but it was that's the way that game was going. But it was back to a point on 54 minutes, 2-8 to 1-12, and then Jack Leamy got a free to level it on the 60th minute. So Golden had slowly clawed it back with the breeze, 9 points down at half time. It was level on 60 minutes, and then Dylan Walsh got a free to essentially win the game on the 62nd minute. It gave Ballingarry the lead. Dahi Bargary, it was a foul he really didn't need to give away. I'd imagine maybe if you're at the game you could have been aggrieved at the free, but it was so much bodies in around the 45, and it broke off to a Ballingarry player who went on a run, and I think it was Dahi Bargary for Golden. He just pulled the jersey for a half a second, but long enough that it was right in front of the referee, and it was a free, and Dylan Walsh put it over the bar. But frustrating one for Golden. They did have a few more chances late on, with sidelines dropping in around the square and things like that, but Ballingarry held on to make it into the final. So yeah, another entertaining game. Jack Leamy hurled well, and as he has all year, and even last year in the final. But Golden finalists last year, beaten at the semi-final stage this year. But again, a young team that seem to be coming. So, but Ballingarry, the Dylan Walsh show, just what a performance! Even back in his own half back line, winning the ball and kind of winning frees and coming out with the ball and things like that. It was an unbelievable performance, and I think he's maybe a year younger than me. I think he's 26, is he? Around that. So he was in with Tip 2 years ago, I think, in Liam Call's first year, and he was asked by was it Stephen Gleeson doing commentary on that game on Club or after, just about you'll surely want to get the call from Liam Cahill, and he was kind of saying, oh, hopefully, but look, we'll have to focus on the club here for the minute. So he should definitely get the call anyway. He's been hurling really, really well for Ballingarry. And Ballingarry against Moneygall in the final. So Moneygall would probably be favourites for this one, I would suspect. They've been my favourites throughout the competition, and it's going to be a really good final. Finals are hard to win. That final is on in Temple Toohey, is it? On 2 o'clock on the Saturday the 12th, I'm not sure. It's on the Saturday anyway, it's not in Temple Stadium. It's either on Temple Toohey or Temple Moor. But it's going to be a real interesting final, no doubt. And the clashes of Shawnee Kennelly and the clashes of Dylan Walsh, Shawnee Kennelly, Joe Fogarty, these players, is going to be really interesting. So the relegation final then in the intermediate grade, Ballybacon Grange 217 to Upper Church Drumbands 111. Didn't see any of this game now, so I can't really comment on it. But Ballybacon Grange saved their Ballybacon. That's shocking. That's awful. I shouldn't have They saved their intermediate status with a 217 to 111 win over Upperchurch. Upperchurch's second team, so difficult weekend for Upperchurch, losing out in extra time in the the Premier Intermediate semi-final and then losing the relegation final. So they'll head back to Junior A, and Ballybacon Grange, as I said, saved their bacon, 217 to 111. They stay up for another year at least. So we did predict Golden would win, so Ballingarry proved us wrong there, and we did predict Moneygall would win as well, and we did predict that Ballybacon would win. So let's see, out of those 9 games that we've talked about, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, no, sorry. That game was right. So we predicted Cashel, that's 1. We predicted Toom, that's 2. We predicted Kappa White to beat, no, Moneygall to beat Kappa White, that's 3. We predicted Ballybacon to win, that's 4. And we predicted Laura to win, that's 5. And that Sean Tracy's Newport game was a draw, so we were a point off there. That's pretty alright. 5 out of 9. The game's getting more harder to predict, I think, as you get to this stage of the season. So yeah, I think we did pretty well there. So that's pretty much it for this week's episode of the podcast. We'll be back next week looking ahead to the finals. So I'll have a busy week ahead just preparing myself for the finals with Inside and Tip FM. So I'm looking forward to it, though. I can't wait for that final day down in Semple Stadium. I think hopefully it's a nice day weather-wise. I think we get a really big crowd in Semple Stadium, between, as I mentioned, all 4 divisions. You've Cashel, Carrickswan, and then Toomevara and Lockmore, Castellini. So really looking forward to that. We'll preview those games in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, so if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're up to 107 subscribers now, so we wanted to get to 100 before the county final. So thanks to everyone who's subscribed. We've reached that goal anyway, but we'll stay going. We'll stay going as best we can. So yeah, many thanks if you're listening, and if you're listening on Spotify or that, give us a good old rating and share us on Twitter and the usual crack. So hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for listening, and yeah, we'll leave it at that. And yeah, looking forward to the podcast next week, and really looking forward to county finals days. But for now, thanks for listening. Good luck.